Protecting your identity is a lot like protecting your home. If you leave the front door open, you're really exposed to people just wandering in. Similarly, with our identity, we want to think about what are those things that we can do to close that front door and lock it to protect ourselves as best as we can.
In 2023, it's really impossible to completely protect ourselves and our identities.
Yeah.
We think about people that will just show up and do things to impersonate us. We had a client recently who he lives here in Knoxville, but it seems that someone showed up to a branch down in Texas of a bank, a regional bank, and presented all kinds of different information like a social security card, a driver's license, all these different things, and was trying to make a very large withdrawal from his account. And the client was able to talk with the teller who actually saw this person, and it was alarming because everything lined up. Teller was an experienced teller. So there's not something that we can say that's foolproof in the way that we defend against folks showing up and impersonating other people. This has been going on since the beginning of time. I mean, the Greek god Zeus, if you want to watch a movie that's all about this, it's, Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale's, story that's, fascinating. We go back to Charles Ponzi and just the schemes of being able to misrepresent who we are to the detriment of other people. So this is not a new concept, but the twist is that now we've got this cybersecurity element, and it is a little bit alarming because there's less control. We can't just lock that front door. We can't just maybe put up a higher security fence. There are things that maybe go beyond our technical capability. And so we want to talk through that today, some of the key things that we think everybody should be doing as they think about protecting themselves against identity fraud.
Yeah. Well, as I think about this, personal identity theft is real. Now, we want to start off and say, Spencer and I, we are not cybersecurity experts, but there are just some basic things that we want to cover today that will help you, again, close that front door to your identity. So I was reading an article that was written in 2019, and it said, your social security number is somewhere on the dark web. And then it's projected that in 2023, some researchers have done some digging that says you can buy a social security number on the dark web for as little as $2.
Ooh, wow.
So Spencer, your social security number is on the internet being actively trying to be sold for as little as $2. And this client of ours, you can buy somebody's driver's license. You can buy all of the information necessary to create an entirely new identity. So when we think about this, personal identity theft, it is real. It's a real problem that is going on. But like you said, this has been on for the genesis of time.
Yeah.
People have always done this, and criminals are always going to try to find new ways to do this. So there's nothing new under the sun. We just have to think about what are the ways today that we can really protect our identity. And I think the posture we want to take is we don't want to live in fear and anxiety about these things because there's nothing we can do to change the fact that our information is on the dark web. There's nothing that we can do to change the fact that people are going to want to take advantage of people that are vulnerable. And we think about clients that are later in life, they're going to be more vulnerable than maybe someone that's in their early 20s that doesn't have a whole lot of money.
Right.
So we want to start taking proactive steps today to protect our identity tomorrow. And the website safetydetectives.com is where I got this information about the cost of buying a new Social Security card or somebody else's Social Security card. And they suggest that the cost to create an entirely new identity in the USA is roughly $1,267 and 0.2683 Bitcoin, which is approximately $7,600 as of the time we're recording in May of 23. So the reality is it's not that expensive to create a new identity. And when we say create a new identity, we're not saying you become a new person. It means I take on the identity of somebody else. And so if you are an adept person that is an adept criminal, you can find a way to steal somebody's identity. And so that purchase, that essentially $8,800, it gets you a passport, a driver's license, a birth certificate, a high school diploma, a bachelor's degree, a bank account, credit card, and some counterfeit money. That's a lot. You can do a lot with all of those things. And so we want to start thinking, what can we do to build those walls to really protect ourselves in case of this information that is on the internet being stolen?
And I think about that again in terms of circle of concern, circle of control that we've talked about sometimes. We have this circle of concern that it can be debilitating when we have a level of anxiety, and we can just click on articles that tell us how our identity is going to be compromised.
Yeah.
But if we have 1 hour or a couple of hours, instead of reading 7 different articles and just being debilitated, what are some of the things that we can do if we've got a couple hours here to be able to address this? What's in that circle of control that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start off, we're going to think about our devices, we're going to think about our logins on the internet, and then we're going to think about the things like our credit score and how do we protect our credit. So let's start off with our devices. Now, Windows has been around for a long time. If it is 2023 and you're still using Windows 95, Windows XP, Windows 7, 8, you're probably vulnerable because those operating systems have been decommissioned. So it means Microsoft is no longer providing software updates to old, dated software. But however, we're in the realm of Windows 10, Windows 11. You want to keep those devices automatically updating. Similarly, Apple, they've stopped doing security updates for anything older than an iPhone 6. So you are at a security risk if you are holding on to dated software. So hackers can infiltrate your computer, they can infiltrate your phone if you're not updating the software. Or if you're using outdated software, maybe it's time to spend $500, $700 to buy a new phone. Maybe it's time to spend $500, $700 to replace that old computer, because simply by using an old device that is not able to have automatic software security vulnerabilities done, then you're at risk. And similarly, my phone this morning just popped up and said, hey, there's a new software update. It's really easy to ignore that and ignore it and ignore it, but the longer you ignore it, the more vulnerable you are. So turn on those automatic updates. It's not that difficult.
And it really sounds like if you've bought the phone, say, in the last 3-4 years, you're probably fine as long as it's updating.
Yep.
But we're thinking if it was a purchase maybe 10 years ago, that we need to be careful about the operating system.
Yeah. Old devices are really vulnerable, but new devices can be if you're not updating the software. So that's really the concern here, is make sure that you're using the latest version of software, because companies are really trying to be proactive about patching their security vulnerabilities within their software. The other thing there is thinking about phones. Enable remote locking and remote wiping of your device. If you cannot find your device, but you have no way to lock it and just totally wipe all the data, you are maybe at risk. Let's say you have a passcode that's only 4 digits, which is the minimum that most phones require, 4 to 6, and you have a 4-digit password. That's going to be hacked really quickly. So if you don't have the opportunity to log onto a computer and say, I lost my phone, I need to lock it and wipe it right away, then you're at risk. So just, again, keep your devices secure. Automatic updates and remote locking and remote wiping is really, really valuable. So next, we want to jump into online identity. So we want to think about our passwords. We'll do another video here shortly that talks about how to make passwords, how to keep your passwords safe. But the reality is complexity is key. And it doesn't just need to be complexity. You can write a very long password that's really easy to remember. Spencer and Austin work together. It's a very long password. It's really easy to remember, and it's very complex.
Thank goodness it's not that. Anybody could figure that out.
Anybody could figure that out if we were saying it, but that's not it. So just with your passwords, again, length trumps lots of randomness. So make your passwords long.
So we had like 16 letters, and even though it was all undercase, letters, it would be better than if we had 8 that were all kinds of complex with numbers and letters and symbols.
Yep. Yeah. So length is always going to be better because you think about the number of iterations that the computer has to try to get through to get there. If you have all the letters, you've got 26 letters, multiply it by however long, 16 characters. You just do that math and it's going to take a long time to get through that.
Maybe not the number 1 16 times, but
No.
some level of mixing it up in there. Okay.
Yeah. So be creative with this, but you don't have to spend all of eternity thinking about a password. The other thing that we would highly recommend is using multi-factor authentication whenever available. So briefly, multi-factor authentication is essentially saying it's something you know, your password, passcode, any of those things. Something you have, a phone, there are key fobs that you can use as multi-factor authentication, or something that you are. We think about a fingerprint ID, a facial recognition, eye recognition. So it's those 3 things. So you have to log in with a combination of them. So maybe you enter a password and then you get a text message to your device. Maybe you have to log in using a username, but then a pop-up comes up on your screen and you have to verify what that is, or you have to use your facial recognition. Multi-factor authentication is going to make your devices safer. It's going to make your online login safer. If I get a text from a financial institution that I'm trying to log in and I know that I'm not trying to log in, I just have to ignore it and then they can't get through. So multi-factor authentication, incredibly important. When possible, instead of using a phone call or an SMS, use an app. There's lots of different authentication apps out there, but the reality is text messages and phone calls are really easy to be intercepted. So if you can use an app that is directly linked to your phone, so you have to have your phone, that is one of the more secure multi-factor authentication. Not all websites use it, but it's really important to do multi-factor authentication via an app. And really, this is maybe one of the most important things that I can say right now, but if you have not done this for your financial institutions, stop the video, go log onto your bank and do it, because it is really important to do this. And I think most banks require it these days, but stop the video and go put on multi-factor authentication. So the next thing is, when we're thinking about our devices, phishing and SMS smishing campaigns. What they're going to try to do is they're going to try to use urgency, emotion, scarcity, current events, assumed authority to trick you into logging in via this link that they share. So one of the most common ones is Facebook. Facebook will send an email. Facebook will send an email and say, someone has locked you out of your account. Go click this link and log back in. Don't click the link.
Right.
Whether it's in a text message, whether it's in an email, don't click the link. Instead, go to Facebook, the website, and try to log in. If you can still log in,
you're fine.
You're fine.
Right.
Now, if you can't log in, then you need to go through the steps to reset your account. But if you can log in, they're just trying to trick you.
Right.
So if you were not expecting an email that asks you to log in, don't do it. It's really pretty simple, but these emails are going to get more and more and more sophisticated. So really, this is an area where you've got to be aware.
And one of those things, it seems like, is just even looking at the email address. That's the first thing of if you're expecting it to come from Facebook and it comes from, Facebook or something, there's one letter off. You have to be very careful about that, or some entirely different, address, which we've seen many from. That seem like oftentimes they're coming from Eastern Europe or something like that. Got to be very careful.
Very careful. And the last thing we want to think about when we think about our online identity is don't be an oversharer. Now, this may seem counterintuitive in some ways because we are in an age where people like to share things. But the reality is, if you put all of your information out there on the internet, then someone can probably steal it. If you're making mention of where you're going to be going on vacation or when you're going to be leaving, or even having people post on your wall that it's your birthday, people are going to be able to use that information against you. So don't be an oversharer. Think critically before posting something to the internet. You know what I like to think about, I'm not on social media anymore, but would I share this information with a stranger? Would I share this photo of myself with a complete stranger on the street? If the answer is no, then I probably shouldn't post it online. Right. What happens on the internet? It stays on the internet.
Yeah.
It's really hard to wipe your identity from the internet. So protect yourself. Don't make rash posts that overshare information about yourself. You're just leaving yourself vulnerable.
And we've seen this play out. We had a client that went overseas. There was a hacker that figured out that she was overseas and reached out to us and requested a distribution into a different account for tens of thousands of dollars. Now, we knew based on the language that was used by the person that reached out to us that it was not indeed this client, but they had taken over her email address and sent an email that also referenced the fact that she was out of town and that she needed the funds quickly and that we would be having a difficult time contacting her, which all of those things were true.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that we're careful, as you said, about sharing information. And one of the things, of course, that we do is anytime that a client reaches out, we're going to give them a phone call and we're going to see if anything is suspicious even in that phone call. If they're making an unexpected request for a distribution, particularly a large one.
Right.
There. I think the other thing that I come back to as a dad is I think if I share some of this information about my kiddos, could it ever come back and harm them? Could it trick them that, okay, dad shared this story, when child was 8 or 10 or 12, now that's public knowledge. And could it ever be used to, in a confidence scheme against them? So that's one of the reasons that we don't share as much about our families in a financial planning video or in second half stewardship in our podcast, because we're concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing we want to touch on is protecting your credit. And this is really important. Again, if your social security number can be purchased on the dark web for $2, then it's really important to protect your social security card. And you can do it for free.
Yeah.
So a couple things that are just really simple, really slam dunk, easy things to do. Get on the Social Security website, ssa.gov, and register. It's that simple. Then you can start tracking, is the work that I'm doing going to accumulate the benefits on my behalf? Or if you are receiving benefits, are those things accurate? Just register on the socialsecurity.gov website. It makes sense. It takes very little time. Go do that. The next thing is freezing your credit. And when you think about that, you need to do that at each reporting bureau. So you think Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. It can be done online, over the phone, or via email. Simplest way to do it is online. We'll drop a link in the description that will walk you through how to do that. It's really not that difficult. You're going to need some basic information. You're going to need your name. If you were married and changed name, you'll need previous names if there are. Again, if that's applicable. Your address, your date of birth, and your social security number. They're going to ask you those things. If you are on the legitimate website for these places, it's okay to give that information. Again, your information's already on the dark web, so let's go ahead and freeze it. And then if you need a loan, if you want to open a credit card, you can thaw that. Just remember to unfreeze it again, or to freeze it again once you're done thawing that credit.
Right, because a bad actor there is going to have to apply, say, for an account, and if you've frozen it, then that signals to the institution, okay, we can't do this without accessing that credit score. So you kind of shut down a key part of fraud.
Yeah, exactly. Because those companies have to ping each one of those credit bureaus to say, hey, give me the credit score. If they can't ping and ask for the credit score, then you're not going to be able to get a loan on behalf of somebody else because you're trying to impersonate them. So it's really easy. Take the 20, 30 minutes and lock down your credit.
Well, Austin, thanks for walking through all of those pieces. And if we came back to kind of our highlights here, we think about 1, using multifactor authentication, 2, going to that Social Security website and registering, and then 3rd, freezing our credit scores. Those would be, if we have a couple hours on a Saturday morning, instead of, again, getting upset and worked up about the fact that we could be hacked, let's do the things that, again, kind of create that perimeter around us as best we can. And then we also have additional resources that will pop in the show notes, and you can read to your heart's content. Brian Krebs and other people do a wonderful job going as deep into the rabbit hole as you want to go. So feel free to do that. Again, we're not experts in this field, but we think that these are some simple steps that you can take, again, to make it a little bit harder for hackers to get in and create havoc. Hope that you've enjoyed this. We'll look forward to catching up with you next time.
If you like these financial planning videos, please share with a friend, and if you have questions,
Go to our website at SiriusRetirement.com. This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can visit our website at SiriusRetirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents. Advisory services offered through Retirement Planning Services, LLC.